Hey, what's up, guys? Rudelinel here, come back at you with another batch tutorial. Alright, let's get the Windows command line ready to go, along with Notepad++, because we're going to be writing a script in this video and that sort of thing, just like we always do. And, man, let's get to it. Alright, now, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the for loop. And we've been taking a look at some loops in the last couple of videos. I think it was actually only the last video. I'll admit it has been a while since I've actually created a tutorial. But hey, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about batch. Alright, now, with the for loop, though, it gives you sort of like a variable that allows you to be able to keep track of the increment or the piece of the set that you're looping through, and so you can manipulate that while you're going through your loop. And that might be a little hard to understand, but let me tell you guys first thing though, for loops are crazy. In fact, they are really crazy. In fact, they are so crazy I'm going to have to call the for loops crazy like 5 times so you guys get across the idea of how crazy the for loop is. Because there are so many command line parameters and arguments that you can pass to this little keyword here in batch, and it'll change the way the for loop will run. It'll change what it does and how it does it, and you can combine all these things obviously and make it a whole huge. It's a humongous mess. Let me tell you that. And that's the thing that I'm really worried about, and I actually have trouble with the for loop. So we're gonna see how well this goes. Before we jump into it, though, I do want to give you guys at least a basic syntax, and then we're going to be taking a look at more of the arguments that we can pass to it and more of the ways we can incorporate these into our scripts and programs. But before we get into that, let's actually take a look at what we're going to be working with by checking out the help file. We're going to type in for in our command line here, FOR. That's the keyword. It's pretty easy. Just like if, they're very similar because it's all it really is. And now we'll do a little tag here, and I'll send in the the question mark. And remember, that will redirect us to the little help file. Like if we typed in help for it, they'll both give you the same thing. But anyway, it runs a specified command for each file in a set of files. Now, that isn't all it does. There are a whole lot of arguments and parameters that's going to change the way it works. But really, you have this set. You have this like group or list of items or entities that you're going to be working with, that you're going to be looping through. You're going to have multiple of like pieces of the set. And now the variable is going to go through this, and the value is going to change every single time to that actual number, or whatever you've supplied inside the set. And then it'll do something with it, whether it be echo it out, whether it be delete a file or something, or that sort of thing. It's going to do everything that you supply inside of our code block, and that sort of thing. So now when I'm talking about this, it might be a little hard to wrap your mind around, especially if this is the first time you've ever done anything with for loops. But we're gonna jump right into it, and let's knock them all down one at a time. If you keep like going through here, though, you can see there's a whole lot to learn about the for loop. It's a long help file. But anyway, let's check this out. I'm gonna create a new script here. I'm gonna save mine first of all. Call it script.bat as usual. Script.bat. Okay, it always takes me so long to type that. Add echo off. I can't even speak. I can't even type. What am I doing? And we'll use our enable something. Enable delayed expansion. That's what it is. We can go to our main function that we're going to create. Create main function, set local, end local, and go to the end of file, or end of function, however you'd like to think of it. We'll indent this stuff here, so we look a little bit better, and we can get right in the way. First of all, I'm going to create a string variable. So we're going to want to set string, and I'll just do hello world, and remember we're using 2 carets here so we can escape the exclamation point, because when we're using the delayed expansion, we're going to be using exclamation points more and more rather than the percent signs that we would actually be using for our variables. So that kind of takes away the functionality here, and that's why we have to supply those 2 caret symbols. Now we're going to use that sort of notation inside of our display, though. Echo string, and remember we're using these 2 exclamation points. So you guys get a little bit of a review here. Let's actually check this out. If we run script, it says hello world, and it gives us everything we need. Now in the for loop, though, that's something a little different. We're not actually going to be able to use these 2 exclamation marks right here. So let's check out the syntax there. Let's do for, and then we need a variable. If you guys remember, if you check out the for loop, we've got a variable that we're working with. Now here, though, they actually use only 1% sign. But if you check down here, to use the for command in a batch program, specify 2% signs and then the variable name, instead of the 1% sign that you'd be using in the actual command line. And then, but remember, the variable name has to be only like one letter because we want to be able to associate with that rather than it being a real variable. It's only something exclusive to the for loop. And we can't use numbers or anything because that's what we've been using to associate with command line arguments for the program and for the script and that sort of thing. And they are case sensitive, keeping track of that. So %i is different from %I. Remember to keep that in mind. And in my case, I'm going to be using %G, because G is another one which it doesn't correspond or it doesn't associate with any of the command line arguments you would normally pass to for, and it has a whole lot of letters after it in the alphabet that it would be able to use without having to run into any errors with that again. And I'll get into that more and more later on because we are going to be using multiple letters one after the other and consecutive in the alphabet for that sort of thing. But hey, so we do need that % right there. There we go. %G, and we can't use the exclamation points up here. We're going to have to use the % signs just because that's the way the for loop works. Even if you're using delayed expansion, you have to use the % signs, but that's not really a big deal because we're only getting the variable information from the set. We can't actually change the variable or anything else, and it's not really needed after the actual loop. So let's create a set though. Let's do 1, 2, 3. Now normally inside of our set they're separated by what we call delimiters. They're things that actually separate each individual value. And by default it's like spaces or any white space character. And we can change this the more we go in depth with the for loop, but for now we're just going to be keeping track of these 1, 2, 3. I'll add 4 and 5. But these are, remember, it's using spaces to be able to tell each thing is a different token or a different thing that we're looping through inside of our set. Now we're going to want to use do so we can actually start the loop, and we'll create a code block with those two parentheses that we normally use for like an if statement and our conditional statement. So now what we can do is go ahead and echo out $G. Dual % remember, because we're inside of a batch script. Now if we do this, let's actually create a new line up here so it looks a little cleaner. If we get out of this jumbled mess of information, we clear the screen, we can run script, and it'll do hello world, and then it'll loop through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because it's looping through the set here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and G is being replaced with that value every single time. We can actually do a test here. Let's say set-a test can equal 3. How about that? Now we can test if the value of test is equal to the value of G. We can go ahead and start a new code block here, and we can echo out test is G, because we are able to keep track of what the actual value is. So when the value is 1, it's not going to run through this conditional statement because 1 isn't 3. When it runs 2, it's going to skip over it again. But when it's 3, when this % G is equal to 3, or the value of test, it'll run this code. So because we can keep track of the variable and actually see what the value is that we're working with, we can do a little bit more things, and the for loop is a bit more advanced for us. So let's go ahead and run this though. Let's see what this does. Hello world, 1, 2, 3, and it'll tell us 3 is 3 and 4 are 5. So there you go. That is the syntax for the for loop in like its simplest form. We've got the variable that we're going to be using to keep track of. We've got the set that we're going to be looping through, and then we've actually got the command that we're working with inside of the code block. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to the for loop. It's absurd how crazy the loop is, so we're going to be trying to push through each parameter and each argument one after the other. Thank you guys for watching though, and I hope to see you in the next video where we attack this once again. Bye guys.